Okay, let's try and unpack this. A single tweet, right? And the idea is it could potentially, I don't know, reshape the whole internet.
Yeah, it sounds pretty wild when you put it like that.
It does. But that's really our starting point today. This really bold prediction from an anonymous Twitter user, imrulo.eth, and
Right.
it's all about the Ethereum Name Service, ENS, and what it might do with ICANN.
It's pretty fascinating how one post can just kickstart such a huge conversation about, well, the internet's plumbing, essentially.
Totally. And that's our mission for you today, really, to explore this idea. Could ENS actually apply for its own ICANN top-level domain? We're talking .ends.
Yeah.
We promise not to get lost in all the, the super technical stuff.
Boy.
But we do want to understand what a huge deal this could be, how it might sort of bridge the internet we use now, Web 2, with this new decentralized thing, Web 3.
Well, if you think about how the internet's evolved, it makes sense people are exploring this. How do these different worlds start talking to each other?
Exactly. So we're looking at that viral tweet thread from imrulo.eth and also some really sharp analysis from the Future Protocols podcast.
Yeah, they really dug into it.
They did. So we're going to distill that for you. Let's dive in. What's the actual vision here? What's the prediction?
So the core idea from imrulo.eth and what Future Protocols unpacked, it's more than just adding, another something to the list.
Right.
It's suggesting a real merge, taking the existing internet, the one ICANN oversees, and Web3, the decentralized stuff, and putting them in one single namespace.
Wow. Okay. So they could coexist, interact
That's the vision.
seamlessly.
That feels fundamental, not just like getting another .com or .org. What makes .es potentially so different?
Well, the significance is really about connection. It's potentially connecting the regular domain name system, DNS, that we all use every day,
Right.
with these new decentralized identity systems built on blockchain like ENS.
So my online identity could kind of follow me between the old and new internet? That's the potential, yeah. Integrating your decentralized identity with, the websites and apps you already use.
Future Protocols had this really useful comparison
Yeah.
between .eth and this proposed .es. Could you walk us through that?
Sure. The analogy they used was pretty neat. They painted .eth, the current ENS domains, as being kind of like Bitcoin, pure, decentralized, maybe a bit separate from the old systems.
Okay, the purest approach.
Right. Whereas .ends is positioned more like Ethereum itself, a more pragmatic layer,
Yeah.
designed specifically to connect and interact with the existing internet infrastructure, the old system.
Got it. So dot is the idealist, dot is the bridge builder. Makes
Yeah.
sense. Okay, so if ENS actually wanted to do this,
Yeah.
how? How do you get your own TLD from ICANN? What's the strategy?
Well, the strategy being talked about, it involves potentially migrating from .eth to Maze.
Migrating dot how?
The idea floated is this concept of burning your existing .s name.
Burning, like destroying it.
Essentially, yes.
That sounds... Wait, isn't that totally against the whole Web3 ownership thing? Wouldn't people, freak out?
Yeah, it definitely sounds counterintuitive. It raises eyebrows. But the way proponents frame it is
Yeah.
crucial. They argue it's not abandoning decentralization. It's about strategically extending its reach.
Making it work within the current system.
Exactly. Making it more accessible, integrating it. The goal is wider adoption. Technically, you'd probably send the .eth NFT to a special address, a burn address,
Okay.
that takes it out of circulation, frees up the name, and lets them create a one-to-one link to the new .ends domain within their proposed system.
So it creates scarcity for .ends too.
Right. And a clear link.
But what's in it for ICANN? The gatekeepers. Why would they even play ball? Why grant a .ends TLD?
That's a great question. The Future Protocols discussion suggested ICANN get something interesting too. They'd essentially get a blockchain-native TLD under their umbrella.
Blockchain native. What does that mean for them?
It means the underlying registry, maybe even parts of the governance, could use blockchain tech. It's a new model for them, totally different from their traditional systems.
So it's like ICANN acknowledging Web3.
Kind of, yeah. Integrating with it,
Mhm.
maybe seeing new revenue streams, staying relevant as things change.
Okay, makes sense from their side. And what about for Ethereum itself? The blockchain ENS runs on. What's the big win there?
Oh, the potential there is huge. Ethereum could become like a foundational layer for digital identity on a much, much bigger scale.
How so?
Well, by being the tech that bridges these Web 2 and Web 3 domains, Ethereum could underpin how we identify ourselves online, period. whether you're using a dApp or just a normal website.
Okay, this is where it gets really tricky, though, doesn't it? You've got Web3's whole thing about being censorship resistant,
Right.
and then you've got ICANN, which is all about rules and oversight. How on earth do you square that circle?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the proposed solution is actually pretty clever, kind of bold. The idea is that DIAN's domains could default to being unstoppable.
Unstoppable mode, default.
Yeah, inheriting those censorship-resistant qualities, right from the start.
Okay, but hang on. What about trademarks? Disputes. ICANN takes that stuff super seriously. How does unstoppable deal with a legitimate trademark claim?
That's where the compromise comes in. The suggestion is to have optional compliance for things like trademarks.
Optional.
Yeah, so traditional companies, Web2 folks, could still use established ICANN processes if there's, like, an infringement issue.
But if you don't opt in, you stay unstoppable.
That seems to be the idea, balancing the Web3 ethos with Web2 realities.
The Future Protocols team used this great analogy. The Trojan horse. What was that about in this context?
Yes, the Trojan horse. The idea there is ICANN might think it's taming Web3 by bringing ENS into its fold, right?
Like, okay, now you have to follow our rules.
Exactly. But the twist, according to this view, is that ENS, by getting inside the DNS system, is actually the one doing the colonizing.
Huh. So Web3 subtly influencing or even reshaping the old system from within.
Precisely. It flips the power dynamic. ICANN thinks it's absorbing Web3, but maybe Web3 is actually infiltrating DNS.
Yeah.
It's about subverting expectations, like we've seen before with disruptive tech.
Wow. Okay, that's a fascinating perspective. So let's play this out. If this wild idea actually happens, what are the ripples? How does the internet landscape change for us?
The impact could be pretty massive. For starters, think about domain names.
Yeah.
New companies, startups,
Yeah.
maybe they start choosing .ins over .com. They might see it as the native address for the next web.
That would be a huge shift away from .com dominance. What about search? Like Google, would they have to start indexing stuff on .in sites?
Very likely, yeah.
Yeah.
If .ins gets real adoption, Google and others would almost certainly need to index the apps and content on those domains. Otherwise, they miss a whole chunk of the web.
So discovering Web3 stuff could become way easier for everyday users.
Exactly. It brings it out of the niche corners.
So the grand vision here isn't just a new suffix. It's potentially changing how we interact with the whole internet.
That's the scale of the idea, yes. And future protocols made that interesting comparison.
The Satoshi one?
Yeah, likening Imrulo.eth's tweet, maybe half jokingly, maybe not, to Satoshi's Bitcoin white paper.
Meaning a seemingly radical idea could actually spark a revolution.
That's the parallel they drew, that it could be the seed of something truly transformative.
Okay, but let's pump the brakes a bit. This sounds amazing, but there have got to be major hurdles, right? Challenges.
Oh, absolutely. The biggest one we keep circling back to is ENS actually having to comply with ICANN's rules. That's non-negotiable for a TLD.
And those rules might clash hard with decentralization principles.
Definitely. There are complex legal hoops, governance frameworks. It's not straightforward. And that's just ICANN. ENS would have his own internal challenges too.
What? Technical, community agreement.
Both. Implementing something this big, getting consensus from the ENS community, figuring out the technicals of burning and mapping. It's a massive undertaking internally as well.
Right. That core tension. Decentralized ideals versus centralized reality. It's a tough balance.
It really is. And look, it's important for you listening to know this isn't a sure thing, not by a long shot.
Yeah, Future Protocols even called it maybe a pipe dream.
They did.
Yeah.
But even if it is, the idea itself is significant. It pushes us to think about where the internet could go.
Okay, so as we kind of wrap up this deep dive then, what's the main thing you want people to take away from this .ends prediction?
I think the key takeaway is really the potential for .ends to act as this vital bridge, connecting the internet we know, Web 2, with the emerging possibilities of Web 3, all through a potentially very strategic move by ENS within the ICANN system.
All right, and for anyone listening who actually owns a .eth domain right now, what should they be thinking? Should they be planning a bonfire?
Haha, no, definitely not yet. The advice from Future Protocols was crystal clear. Hold tight. It's a super interesting possibility, yes, but it's still just a prediction. What you should do, though, is maybe keep an eye on ICANN.
When they open up applications for new TLDs again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That'll be the moment of truth, or at least the first real test to see if this idea has legs.
Right. So let's leave you with a final thought then. Just consider how the absolute basics of the internet addresses identity might be shifting under our feet, maybe sparked by just one tweet. What does that mean long term? for how we interact, what we own online, the internet's actual structure,
Yeah.
well, it's a lot to chew on. This idea of an internet that's both decentralized and integrated.
It certainly is a potential future worth pondering.